Hi everyone, and welcome back to Ascended Masters 101, where we talk all about the teachings of the Ascended Masters. We are in the middle of a discussion on the 7 rays and about the framework they create for us as we seek to understand more about God, about ourselves, and our spiritual path back to union with God. So if you've just now joined us and you're new to the 7 rays, you'll find episodes 1 through 3 helpful for some context. Otherwise, let's jump in. So we just finished talking about how when we use God's light correctly to express the virtues and the qualities of God on each of the 7 rays, then that energy rises up to our causal body to expand our treasure house in heaven. Some people have stocked up great treasure for themselves in heaven and have large causal bodies, while others may still be working on gathering and growing these virtues and qualities of God. The thing is, though, that most of us still make a good number of mistakes. We are still evolving and growing in this spiritual schoolroom that we call the earth, and we don't always pass our spiritual exams. We may be on point for a moment or an hour or a day as we manage to stay centered and harmonious and connected with our inner reality. But what often happens is that we get tired. It's been a long day, something happens at work, or we simply forget to keep the line of our consciousness taut and at attention. Or maybe we have never really built up a momentum in one virtue or another, and every time we're tested on, say, peace, we flunk the exam every time. So for whatever reason, let's say we abandon our post as the watchman on the wall of our consciousness. We lose it. We drop the ball spiritually. And instead of using God's energy to express love, we express hate or dislike. Or maybe instead of thinking thoughts of faith, we use God's energy to entertain thoughts of fear instead. Or instead of striving for excellence, we settle for mediocrity. As you may have noticed, these are the opposites of the positive qualities and virtues of each ray that we were describing in the last video. So each ray has its positive qualities and it has traits that are the perversion of that ray. And they are usually the opposites of the positives, but there are also specific traits that are perversions of a ray that you might not expect. So it's good to look through the list and familiarize yourself with it so you are aware of them. So for a bit of context, I want to mention that God's light is constantly coming into our beings through what's called our crystal cord. We are constantly being bathed in light energy from God. To learn more about this, you can watch the video on this channel called What You Look Like Spiritually. And since we have free will, we have the freedom to use that light moment by moment, either for good or for ill. And of course, most of us are a mix of the two. One moment we may use God's light to express joy or generosity, and the next we might be using it to complain or to express irritation. So a big part of the spiritual path is not just growing the flowers of our virtues and our positive qualities, but also of tending to the weeds in the gardens of our beings, of pulling out the vices even as we plant the virtues. My husband and I explain this to our kids as needing to become more of their big me and to blow out their little me. This is based on a great children's book, by the way, called The Little Me and the Great Me, and I'll link to that below in case you're interested, but that's another subject. So what happens to this energy that was used for not so great things? It certainly can't go up to our causal body, only good things can go there. So this energy is said to be misqualified or used incorrectly, and this misqualified energy is heavy and dense, and it settles down into what's called our electronic belt. And our electronic belt is kind of the opposite of our causal body. Instead of housing all of our positively qualified energy, it contains our negatively qualified energy. The good news is that it can be dealt with. It can be transmuted and changed, and that energy can be freed again. The violet flame is a big part of that equation, and to learn more about this extremely effective spiritual tool, watch the video on this channel called The Violet Flame Explained. So we can talk more about the electronic belt in another video, but for now I'd like to cover what these negative traits, these weeds are that might be smart for us to start thinking about. Again, we'll do a brief overview for each of the 7 rays just to get a quick idea, but if you'd like to see a more thorough list, I'll post a link to Ascended Master Encyclopedia in the description, which is what I'm referencing for this section. So, for the first ray, some of the perversions of the ray of power are imperfection, human will, doubt, a willy-nilly existence, disobedience, state of harm, danger, and defiance and rebellion against God's laws. You'll notice that these are pretty much the opposites of the positive qualities for the first ray that we covered in the last video. For the second ray, some perversions of the ray of wisdom are pride, ego-centeredness, human logic, human reason, witchcraft, black magic, vanity, wrong knowledge, ignorance, lethargy, and mental density. In the third ray, we find perversions of the flame of love. These include human love, human sympathy, selfishness, negligence, discord, sensuality, self-pity, disunity, and decay. Perversions of the fourth ray of purity include impurity, imperfection, lack of self-control, amorality, discouragement, lust, loneliness, misuses of the sacred fire, and lawlessness. On the fifth ray, which carries the flame of wholeness, some of the perversions are spiritual impoverishment, error, insufficiency, lack, death, disease, aging, degeneration, ingratitude, inconstancy, small-mindedness, envy, jealousy, greed, possessiveness, and inharmony. Some of the perversions of the sixth ray of service include emotional turbulence, war, ego-centered existence, desirefulness, harmfulness, imbalance manifesting as clans, gangs, social cliques, group marriages, and free love, and disruption of family and community life through perversions of the threefold flame. And if some of these terms are somewhat new to you, don't worry, these are just kind of throwing all of these out there for you to get a sense, and as you learn more about the Ascended Master's teachings, I think you'll start to kind of put the pieces together. Finally, perversions of the seventh ray of freedom include servitude, bondage, injustice, intolerance, hardness of heart, cruelty, disorderliness, stagnation, dogma, and last of all, perversions and misinterpretations of Scripture and the laws of truth. Now, in reviewing some of these traits and conditions, I'm sure we can all pick out things that are definitely weeds that are growing in our garden, and I'd like to encourage you to not get discouraged about the fact that you have just discovered weeds in your garden. We all have them, and it is okay to still be working towards a weed-free garden. The thing to remember is that the Ascended Masters are helping us each step of the way. They show us in detail which plants in our garden are weeds, which we touched on in this video. But they don't just leave us alone with that. The Masters have given us many, many spiritual gardening tools that are very effective in weed extrication. The science of the spoken word includes a very effective form of prayer that combines prayer, meditation, and visualization to make swift spiritual progress called accrues. And there are decrees dedicated to each of the 7 rays that we can use to help strengthen the positive qualities of each ray and also clean up the negative qualities. I'll go into that more in another video, but I wanted to leave you in this video with the knowledge that the Ascended Masters never leave us comfortless or without resources to win spiritually. In fact, they give us everything we need to make it all the way home to God if we just pick up the tools and use them. So, thank you for watching, and I'm excited to chat with you about the next aspect of the 7 rays in the following episode. I'll see you there.